Hi everyone, it's been a while since our last AirlineSim release, but now we're finally able to present a new version again, version 6.3 to be exact. And this version is all about dynamic turnaround times. You might have read about it on our blog. And in this brief video, I want to show you what this feature is all about and what it enables you to do. So let's dive right in. Here we have a small fleet with an aircraft that is configured with a standard seating configuration that AirlineSim creates for you if you don't create one yourself. Let's have a look at the flight plan I've prepared for this one. So if you have a look here, the first thing you will notice is that the visual flight plan looks a lot different to previous versions of AirlineSim. That is mostly because turnaround times and the flight times are now displayed separately. So the flights themselves pretty much look like in the old version. We have shortened time displays because when we split up turnaround times and flight times, then these blocks become very short, and we want you to be able to still read the times, so we shorten them a bit. But the most important thing, obviously, are the turnaround blocks. So let's look at the details for a moment. If we take these two flights on Monday, Flight 1 and Flight 2, you can see three new elements between those two flights. First of all, there's this gray bar that shows you the destination at which Flight 1 arrives and the airport at which Flight 2 departs. These obviously should be the same. If they are not, this bar will be displayed in red and makes it very obvious to you where you have a scheduling mismatch. Below this gray bar, there's two green bars here. The first one is the bar that represents all inbound activities that have to be taken out after a flight has landed. And the second one is about the outbound activities. Those are all the activities that need to be taken out to get the flight ready for departure. On top of these green bars, you have this gray label, and this shows you the earliest departure time. So in this case, for this flight plan, as many people do, I used rounding to the next 5 minutes. If you wouldn't want to do this, then 8:31 would be the earliest time to leave. This time is based on the quickest time the turnaround can be completed in. So if you look at the gap between Flight 8 and Flight 1 here on Monday, you see that this gap is very long, and the inbound and outbound turnaround activities are very far apart from each other. So here this gray label makes a lot more sense, showing you when this flight could take off if you would want to move the flight to an earlier time. The blue area here represents, just like in the old version, the maintenance time window. Okay, so much about the visual flight plan. I guess you get the idea. What you can do now is you can just click on any one of these turnaround blocks, and by doing so, you get this detailed view of the turnaround activities. So let's look at the key components here. So first of all, you have a list of the inbound activities like taxi in to the gate, deboarding of passengers, cabin cleaning, whatnot. And you have the outbound activities, which are essentially the same in reverse order, just with a few additional things like refueling and a quick maintenance check. You see here the order in which these activities are taken out and how long they take. This is called the critical path, and all the events or all the activities that happen on the critical path are the ones displayed in orange. So what this means is, if you want to shorten the turnaround time, you can only do so by influencing those orange activities. You can, of course, influence all the other activities as well, but shortening, let's say, cabin cleaning here, which takes 18 minutes, won't do any good for your overall turnaround time, because the critical path is taxi, deboarding, catering, unloading, catering, loading, boarding, and pushback. So if you want to improve the overall turnaround time, you have to work on these orange activities. Obviously, for different flights, different scenarios, the critical path can be different. For example, if you have a lot of cargo on board or stuff or something like that, then cargo loading might be the critical path. But this is really what this is all about. Here at the bottom, quickly before we leave this window again, there's just information for the split turnaround. Split turnaround means, as I mentioned earlier, that you have inbound and outbound activities. With a short layover, those two blocks become one, basically. Some of the activities listed here can be taken out in parallel. So the combined turnaround will often be quicker than the split one in total. And this view down here just gives you some more in-depth information about the duration of the single blocks and what the completion and starting times are, whether you have enough time for maintenance and all these things. So on a side note here, as you might have noticed, there are these little question marks again. You know them from our previous versions. And as with all the other new features that we're adding right now and some of the old ones, you can always click these and you get an in-depth help article about the feature you're looking at right now, which should help you get started with all this new stuff, because it is admittedly a bit complicated. So this shows you basically how this feature works, what it looks like. I guess you get the idea what the purpose of this is. But I think it's a lot easier to grasp if you look at an example. So this airline right here is basically a standard setup. If you create this airline without tinkering with the settings or with the catering or with the seating profiles, this is all basically what AirlineSim creates for you if you don't do it yourself. To demonstrate this, here I have created another airline which resembles more of a low-cost carrier kind of operating model. We have the exact same aircraft type here. Only difference here on the fleet view level is that, as you can see, we are maxing out the passenger capacity of this aircraft with economy seats. So we have 189 seats in here. And let's have a look at the flight plan. So this looks pretty much exactly as the other one. I'll switch over to the other one real quick for comparison. So this is the full service carrier. This is our low cost carrier. So first thing to notice here is these little yellow markers here. So this flight plan is built very tightly. That means, as you can see here, we have flight 1 and flight 2 again on Monday. The gray marker says that the earliest departure time for this flight is actually 8:07. And if you look at it closely, you can see that flight 2 is actually leaving on 8:05 already. So we are basically generating delays here in our schedule on purpose. But we'll talk about this in a minute a bit more. The first most important thing to notice here is that this flight plan has, if I have counted correctly, 60 flights, while this other one of the full service carrier only has 52. And again, if you look closely, you can see the flights are exactly the same. They are between London and Frankfurt. It's the same airports. So how does this airline manage to get like 8 more flights into the same amount of time? To understand that, let's have a quick look at the turnaround. And what you can see here is that the activities appear to be shorter. So the whole turnaround here takes 58 minutes. If you look at the other airline over here, the whole turnaround takes 1 hour and 22 minutes. One example that takes less time here, for example, this one for the full service airline, the deboarding takes 11 minutes. and for our low-cost airline it takes only 7. You can achieve this by adjusting the settings of your airline in many different areas. So let's, for example, just take a look at this flight number 1 here and open the information screen on this flight. So this looks all very familiar. That's the flight number management. And if you scroll down to the leg settings for this flight, you see 2 new options in the settings area, and that is the boarding and disembark method and the cargo baggage settings. So just to make clear, the cargo settings are here are the same for our low cost and for our full service carrier. We just don't accept any cargo on these short flights. You could though, but that is a whole different topic. We should probably get into this later or at some other time. More important here is the boarding and disembark method. So our low-cost airline has this setting, use remote stand. The other alternative would be based on airport or terminal. What that means is, even though London and Frankfurt obviously provide boarding bridges for your passengers to board the plane, this low-cost airline has opted out of this and decided, okay, we're just going to use a remote stand, get the passengers to the plane. We're using buses, and we're going to use 2 stairs instead of 1 boarding bridge. And this, of course, accelerates the boarding process. Another thing that this airline has done to get the handling times down is, let's have another look here. If you look at the catering time here, it's 5 minutes. If we compare that to our full service airline, this one, you see that here catering takes 19 minutes. That is because our low-cost airline has decided to offer no onboard service at all, no drinks, no snacks, nothing. And there is a minimal time of catering always required because you need new safety cards, you need some stuff for your crew, items like this. So you will never get rid of the catering part completely, but you can shorten it dramatically by offering less service. And those are just 2 of the examples of how you can influence the turnaround activities. There are more, but we are also planning to add additional means of influencing this. So just stay tuned and see what we come up with in the future. But let's get to another important topic. We talked about it earlier, delays. So this system in general allows to add quite a few sources of delays. Any turnaround activity basically could be a source of delays. In the initial release of 6.3, this is not the case. The only random source of delays are fluctuations in flight time. So sometimes a flight takes 5 minutes longer, sometimes it's 2 minutes quicker. There's just a random variation that gives a bit of movement and a bit of dynamics, but not much, not yet. We want to add this later. But there's still kind of, let's call it static delays. By like how this low-cost carrier does it, by just having a very tight flight plan. And here we have a few minutes overlaps, but we could also, let's take our flight number 2 and move it to an even earlier time. Let's say what is possible? That's a bit too much. Let's go to 7:30 here. And if you look at the matrix here, you can see that we don't get a time window error like we would have gotten in the previous version. We get a warning that we have a time overlap here. And if you look at the flight plan below, the visual one, you can see that this yellow bar has grown quite a bit longer. Now, if you apply these settings, which is possible, you could just save the flight plan like this. You see that you have this immense overlap between those 2 flights. And if you leave it like that, this flight number 2 will probably always have delays. I'm saying probably because the times you can see here in the visual flight plan are based on assumed values. So this one assumes that the flight will be completely full. It will be booked out. So you have a lot of baggage, you have a lot of passengers to handle. If your flight would be almost empty because you have a low load factor, then this flight might still manage to depart on time or with a lower delay. So if you decide to take the risk and leave no time buffers in your flight plan, then it could work out. If you know that your load factor is only 70% most of the time on a certain route, then you could always decide to build a flight plan like this and hope for the best. On the opposite side, you could do it like this full service carrier. Just always leave a little gap in between, leave some extra minutes of space. This is good in two ways. First of all, your whole schedule becomes more stable. So if you have random fluctuations, which I said before we will add more of in the future, your flight plan becomes less prone to delays. And also, if, for example, the conditions change in the future, if, for example, the airport grows or you move to another terminal that has, well, less boarding bridges or whatever. It's just some ideas that might be influencing this in the future. Then your flight plan will be more robust when confronted with such changes. So that is the essence of this new feature, dynamic turnaround times. There's of course a lot more details all around the game that are interesting, like delay codes and where to see the delays and expected flight times and whatnot. But I think this should do as a quick introduction. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you're looking forward to trying it out in a few days. And see you next time.